When you're rowing, they say 6 countries, they say your name. So they go Great Britain, Italy, Ukraine, and then after that they just say the words go. There's no ready on your marks, get set, there's no gun, it's just a red light goes to green. That's it. When I'm competing, the first 2 things that come in my mind are 1, can I qualify and how am I going to qualify? 2, it's who am I against and am I good enough? Has all this training actually worked? The best way to overcome it with rowing is just to breathe heavily, really. Just breathe, make sure you're breathing properly, and then as soon as that light goes, it's all forgotten. The thing I think about when I'm during a race and what keeps me going is that I need to finish the race and preferably finish first. If I win, I will always have ice cream or jelly babies, one or two. The 2 things I really enjoy. So the feeling is something I haven't had for a while, which is being independent, because there's no one around you, you have to steer it yourself. You can't rely on someone to get you there because you have to row there to start and to finish. And no one judges you in a way because there's no wheelchair, it's just a rowing boat. Unless you look closely and saw that I have 2 stabilisers on my boat and I'm sat down and my legs don't move, you wouldn't know. And that's the best thing about it, is you can't see it. Whereas athletics, I used to be sat on a frame and you could quite clearly see that I didn't throw like everyone else does, but with rowing you wouldn't know unless you looked. Whereas athletics, we were never in the same competitions. It was always the disabled and the rest of the people. We were never together. If we were, there was always at least a 2-hour break between sessions because they didn't want to be associated with us. But rowing, since there's only 4 medal events, they put us all together. It makes no difference if you have legs or not. So when I was born, the last thing to stop growing in a baby is the eardrum, and mine didn't stop growing until I was 3. So it caused a parasite, which then caused the tumour. I only found out when I was 11 because I collapsed at school, and they found out it was an ear tumour, but it was in the brain as well. So I had that operated on and I was fine. A year later I had it redone, and they were checking to see if there's anything they can do to save my hearing. They couldn't, but I had a stroke a couple of days afterwards due to morphine. They put me into a coma because they couldn't keep me awake because there was too much trauma going on. And I woke up a couple of days later with a tube in my throat, and my first reaction was to pull the tube out. But I couldn't because my right hand wasn't working, and being right-handed, I started to freak out. I was terrified. The first time I properly felt scared, if I'm honest. And so they took the tube out, and then they had to explain to me that the fact that I may never walk again. So my first goal was to, when I had my injury, was to walk, and I did that. Then I had another 2 strokes, which caused me to go back to not walking, and unfortunately that no longer can happen, that goal, so I then went into more sport-based goals because walking isn't going to happen, and I've accepted it now. A lot of my teachers said, oh, you're in a chair, we don't know what to do for sport now because you can't play rugby or football and you can't run. I wouldn't have said they discouraged me, but they were kind of putting it quite plainly that I probably wouldn't ever compete. And that's kind of what drove me to carry on, because I can be quite narrow-minded when I need to be, and I wanted to prove them wrong. So my mum is an athletics official, so I used to go with her to events, and one day I decided to start throwing because I had nothing else to do. And also my coach, because with athletics she saw something that a lot of people didn't. So she saw at the time it was a very unfit 12-year-old because I'd been in a coma for 3 months. She hadn't really, she saw something because of the speed of my arm when I was throwing. And then she pushed me through, and when I got selected for the Worlds, she was probably the driving force. So my goals when I first started athletics were to keep in the top 10 rankings in the world in shot put and discus, and also to go to a World Juniors. It was only in 2013 when I threw a world record, I ended up being put to number 1 in the world, so I went to the Senior World Championships. That wasn't in my goals at all. I wasn't even supposed to go. But I didn't really get serious until I realised I could actually go to the London Paralympics. And that was a dream which was cut short, but it was due to age. You have to be 15 to compete in athletics at 50. You have to be 15, and I was not. I was 14. And yeah, I was ranked 3rd in the world, and I was a medal chance, but because of my age, they said, you can't do it. And that hit me hard, really hard. So the biggest struggle I've had since my injury and with sport and career has been post-traumatic stress, because I've had that since I was 12 due to my injury, and how it happened. It was quite traumatic when it happened at school, and that's the one thing that stopped me. I had a year out last year in 2017. I took a year out of sport completely. I still trained, but I was only doing 1 session a day compared to 3. And I was just doing it just to keep fit, whereas if I was beforehand, coming up to Rio, I was training 3 times a day, and I was in another country more than I was at home. But that was probably the biggest thing that set me back, was mental health issues. So in my career so far, which is 6 years in the parasport, so from the age of 14, I have probably done more than some people would do in a whole lifetime for sporting career. But the one thing I haven't done is Olympics. I've qualified for 2, but I've never actually gone to Olympics, which is can be quite annoying, quite devastating, because I was world number 1 at the time for London 2012, but couldn't go due to age, and for Rio I was 2nd in the UK but 5th in the world, but I couldn't go because it's 1 per person, so that's the only thing I haven't done yet. I've done Europeans, Worlds, World Games, and I've even done a Commonwealth event, but I've not actually done an Olympics. I am aiming for the Paralympics in Tokyo, then after that I will probably be saying goodbye to the sport, because it's been 10 years. As soon as I've got to Olympic Games, that's me done. I'm happy to retire after then. It doesn't matter where I come in the Olympics, I've done it. That's all I want to do. Then I'll happily retire.